Thank you guys for tuning in today. We have got a very cool guest today because I listened to Walker on radio spots on WVOC while I was driving into my job 20 years ago. I mean, a long time ago. And so Walker and I have spoken on the phone 4 or 5 times over the years. I will call him and say, Walker, I need your help. And he'll say, you're not ready. And he's like, no, thanks. You're not ready. And I'll go, when am I going to be good enough to need Walker's help? And so I am so excited to finally get to meet him in person. I've not met him in person, but get him on the podcast. So thanks, Walker, for coming on the podcast today.
Bill, thank you so much. It's an honor to meet you. And I want to tell your guests, because you have been listening to this podcast and getting great information for free, do yourself a favor and do Bill a favor, do Bill a solid, and subscribe.
Yeah, man.
Subscribe so you get it every week. And the more subscribers he gets, the higher it goes up on the list of all the different places. And so that means he can have better guests on. And
we're just going to keep trying to get cooler guests, and just keep ramping it up.
When you start at the bottom, there's nowhere to go but up, right?
Well, our first round of podcast guests, this was 2 years ago. We had a little office. We had that same conference table, and we would do the podcast at the conference table.
Yeah.
So all of us kind of squeezed into a little spot, and we literally got people, like anyone who would say yes. We didn't know what their business was. We were just like, let's go. And so now here we are 2 years later, getting esteemed guests. So tell everybody kind of who you are and what do you do?
Sure. My name is Walker McKay, and I am the founder of we call the No BS Sales School, which is something I started about, 2014, 10 years ago.
Right.
And we train B2B salespeople on how to be more effective and efficient, quit wasting time with people that aren't going to buy, close deals faster than they would have otherwise, and get better margins than your competitors. So it's kind of what we do.
Awesome. And I got to know you originally through the Sandler
Yes.
Institute. I assume that the principles there are similar. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, the people that were my clients and when I worked for Sandler Training, they tell me that they say there's definitely a difference in what I do, but that it rhymes.
Yeah.
Right. So they would recognize it. People are in the same. I'm not going against the principles I learned. How about that?
Yeah. And I assume that probably sales is done well or not, right? It's probably not a lot. Is there a lot of variability between like great salespeople can do it several ways, or is it?
Yeah, I don't think that, and maybe I'm slipping on the throat. I don't think that there's one great way. I think that I believe that there are a lot of great salespeople that do things exactly the opposite of what I tell people to do. And the problem with that is that often what they do is not repeatable and it's not scalable. So it's kind of like the boss saying, just do what I do and I sell this shit. Why can't you sell this shit? And the difference is that somebody can't copy your personality, right? They're not going to be the same person as you. And if they try to be, they look like a fake. So what I teach is a system and a process that is duplicatable, is repeatable, and is scalable among a large group of people.
And you can find your thing. You can find your method or way to do it.
Yeah. What I say is you can follow my process and use your voice.
Yeah.
I don't want you to be like me.
Right.
I want you to be the best version, the most concise, the most transparent and direct version of you that you can be.
Because I think sales as a profession gets a bad rap.
100%.
And I don't think it deserves that. And obviously, one of the hard things about getting into business for yourself is that you have to become a salesperson.
Yes.
Right. And coming out of a technical background, my background is technical. So coming out of a technical background, salespeople were the enemy. They were the ones that set the client up for expectations that we couldn't deliver and things like that.
Yep.
And so it's been interesting over the years getting to know sales as more of a problem-solving profession. Like how can I help people? And that's how you sell is helping. Talk about kind of the way you approach that part of the thing.
Sure. So there are like 4 principles that I teach people, kind of big picture principles. And the first one is we're not the right fit for everybody. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people get into sales and they get enthralled with their product, their service, and they love it. And they think, I can sell this to everybody because everybody needs it. And so they end up chasing a lot of people way too long, putting themselves in a bad spot with friends and relatives and stuff, trying to sell them stuff. And I believe that it's our job as salespeople to disqualify most people who aren't ready, and to spend time figuring out, is there really a problem here this person's committed to solve? And am I the right person to solve it?
Yeah.
Do I even want to, should I even spend my time there?
Right.
Because I teach people to be very skeptical that somebody really is ready for you yet.
Well, that's been my experience.
Right. Are they really ready? Because all this stuff, when somebody buys something, almost by definition, they're making a change.
Right.
And everybody loves the idea of change unless it comes to them, right? So you got to have a real personal, compelling reason, especially the more complicated or the more custom your thing is and expensive. It's got to be, change is scary for people.
Yeah.
So don't waste your time with those people that aren't ready for it yet.
I learned the first year of the growth conference that they have in Columbus. Have you been to the growth conference?
I have not yet been.
It's been great.
Good.
I've been every year. It's been awesome.
Not sure I know what it is.
The very first year, it's a business conference that's put on by GrowCo. GrowCo is the kind of tech startup group that's at the Boyd Innovation Center, and there's a group of them. Greg Hilton's one of them. Matt Vady's one of them. Yep. Matt Vady's kind of the guy that started.
He's the leader. He's a great guy. Very smart.
But they brought in a speaker for the first year, and he talked about status quo bias, and that we are all biased towards the status quo,
absolutely,
regardless of what we tell you.
Right. Yes.
Right. So I want to lose weight. I want to make more money. I want to have a better relationship with my kids. The problem is that the chasm that you have to get over to get to that point, right, is painful.
Yes.
And we don't want to take on the pain to get to the better outcome, even if it is better. We look at that better future and go, we'd love to have that, but I'm not going through
do the work.
I love cheeseburgers. I'm not going through what it takes to get, better health. And so I think about the status quo bias a lot. And I think with sales, one of the hardest things is to try to get to know quickly.
Yeah.
Because all you want to hear is yes. All you want to hear is like yes every time. And if you're hearing yes every time, your price is too low probably, but then also you're
or you're not in front of enough people.
Or the right people, right?
So one of the things that I heard, and this talks about the status quo bias, people will choose unhappy over uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Almost every time.
Right.
And the irony of that is, although I'm very sensitive to using the word irony or ironic because of that song that was all wrong. But
it's a confusing thing of what irony is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Ironically,
and
who
that's
the hell
ironic.
knows what it is, right?
That's ironic.
Okay. But people will choose unhappy over uncomfortable, and maybe ironically, the only way to fix unhappy is to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's a thing that we're stuck in. And you talked about why people would change. There's this huge chasm of what we call fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? A FUD between here and there. And everybody wants something better, but are you willing to do the work?
Right.
And so another principle that we teach people is to be the guide and not the hero. You're familiar with Donald Miller, right?
Talk about it all the time. I said this yesterday to a group. I don't remember. I was talking to a group of graduate students at the university.
Yeah.
They're in a marketing program, and I talked about wanting to be Obi-Wan and not Luke. You don't want to be Luke. Luke is in a bad spot. Luke just lost his home. Luke doesn't know what to do with himself. He finds out his father is an evil dictator of the entire empire. You don't want to be Luke. You want to be Obi-Wan. You want to be the one that says, Luke, but Obi-Wan doesn't tell Luke, you've got to go fight Darth Vader. He gives them the tools. He gives them the pathway. He kind of gives him a place to have the desire to go and right those wrongs. And yeah, I love Donald Miller's take on that, obviously, because I'm a Star Wars kid, but then
Right.
also, it works so well in that context.
And in sales, right? A lot of people get into sales to be the hero. They want to ring the bell, close the sale, get
Sure.
the check, put my name up on the board. And the problem is, as you said, right, that the hero is the one with the problem that they have to solve, and they have to save everybody.
Right.
And so if that's what you think, if you don't close the sale, then you're the loser.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be the loser. So
Right.
one of a couple of things happen. The salesperson then says, I will not take no for an answer, which is a terrible strategy. And they put pressure on people, or they never give up and they keep calling. Everybody talks about how important persistence is in sales. You got to be persistent. And you know what? I'll agree with that, but I'm going to change the definition of that. I think we should be persistent in finding new opportunities, but calling the same person over and over and over again until they call you back or until they buy, that's stalking. That's not sales, right? And it's not cool.
Yeah. And if you've been on the other side of that, right?
It's awful.
I have a young man who we talked to about payroll, with ADP.
Yeah.
And he's very good at this, right? So hey man, just checking in with you. What's going on? How are you? What's up? And I see all this on TikTok, by the way. We'll talk about this in a minute.
Good.
Of the wording, the checking in or following
circling
up,
back, reaching around, whatever.
Right? All of that stuff.
Ugh.
I think that I heard Donald Miller say the other day, the biggest problem people have is not doing anything. Right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily the wording. It's just that if I'm not checking back with you, whatever. But what I had to do with him at some point is I had to say, we haven't had a chance to talk about this yet. As soon as we figure out something, we'll give you a call.
Yeah.
I promise you, it's something that we will get to, but it's just not something that's high on our priority list right now. And
Bet he didn't take no for an answer either, did he?
Right, and hasn't so far. But it's one of those things. I'm sure I'm going to get a card in the mail.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. And I know these things are there. What I love from a marketer standpoint is to say, okay, what can I do as a marketer to make the salesperson's job easier, right? Because I'm both roles in my company, right? I'm handling marketing and sales. And if I do marketing well, then people almost come sort of ready to go if we do it.
Yeah, that's the ideal situation,
right, And I find that in a sales meeting, there's so many times where we go into thinking we're going into a sales meeting, and what we're going into is a pre-production meeting. We just didn't know that that's not what it was. So we come in with the idea of overcoming objections and all of these things that you do in sales. We don't have to do that because they've already figured out that they want it, right?
Yeah.
And all we're there to do is to say, okay, here's what I think we should do, and this is what it's going to cost, right? And that's a very different thing. Talk about the role of marketing and sales, and how does it work well together?
So it's interesting. I'm just starting to experience this. When I was brought up in sales and worked for the sales training company before, the mantra was that marketing doesn't work, right? And I think that's a mantra that's been around for a long time and something that marketers have fought. And I remember one of my clients was a marketing agency, and he said, there's going to come a day when we have marketing that will actually get people to pick up the phone and call you. And I thought, oh my God, wouldn't that be amazing?
Right.
And my business partner at the time said that shit'll never happen. Right. And so, and you kind of get what you believe, but I've really invested heavily in LinkedIn for the past 3 years. That's the channel I really focus on. And I've found that a couple of times a week now, somebody will raise their hand and say, I think I need to talk to you. And so that to me is fantastic.
Sure.
So what I found, and this is what I believe is working. I don't know if what is working, right? But I believe I do a lot of writing on my own. I try and put my real voice out there and my real experiences with sales and with life and things that are going on with me and whatever, and stories that people can relate to. And so when somebody talks to me, It may be my first time talking to them, but they don't feel like it's the first time they're talking to me.
And they're familiar enough with, and that's what we can accomplish now, that in previous generations, marketing had to be a wall. There had to be,
Right.
I was talking to somebody the other day about 80s toy marketing. So I don't know if you,
I don't
know if
never
you
thought
ever
about
thought
this.
about it this way, but in the 70s, they would market toys to parents.
Yeah, right.
Right? It's because the parents bought the toys.
Yep.
Right? In the 80s, what happened is we switched the marketing to kids.
Right.
Because Star Wars had toys. The Transformers were made by Mattel as a toy, and then the cartoon was made to reach the kids to sell the toy.
Perfect.
Right? And so if we think about anything that we're doing to appeal to things like that, it's getting to know Walker that's going to make me want to work with Walker, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to think I'm a subpar salesperson unless I'm just failing, right? And
Right.
if I'm failing, this is something Grant Cardone used to say, is that the one thing that keeps you from making calls is that nobody's answering, right? And so the only way you're going to think you're a bad salesperson is if you're just failing, and you might just get out of it. But if you say enough things that I go, man, that is smart what he said, right? I do like his perspective on that, or I like the way that he thinks about this, then that's going to help. And I think you can, in the current environment, you can know 100% what's working because you can track everything.
Get feedback immediately.
You know exactly who's watching. You know exactly who's answering, the polls, or who's responding to your post. And I think something like you're one of the 4 or 5 people I see posting regular content on LinkedIn, but doing it in a very similar format. So Matt Vady does the same format, right, where they write out 8 or 10
Long form
paragraphs.
posts. Yeah.
I have not done that. I've done almost all video, right? Because video is kind of our sort of magic bullet. But I think that once you find something like LinkedIn where it works, right? If I had a pottery company or a jewelry company, or I was selling art lessons, or Instagram would probably be a place that I would put a lot of time and energy,
Visual.
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not selling B2B. I'm trying to find those people who are buying the things that I'm making. And I think that targeting of that is really important. And I think that, good marketing can make salespeople look better.
Oh,
they're
100%. Oh my God.
They're there to catch it as it's being thrown. But
What I tell people is, because they'll often complain that the company has shitty leads, or whatever, blah blah blah. And what I tell people is, if you are trying to survive solely on company leads, you will never be more than mediocre, and your value to the company is much less than if you are using those leads that do come in. One hand I say it's practice. On the other hand, as those are good base, but if you're not bringing in your own, then you're easily replaceable.
Well, and random leads are, there's relational leads, right, that come from relationships, right? And then there's those phone calls that you just get out of the blue. Hey,
The bluebirds.
I found you on a Google search, or I found, whatever it is. And I find that those kind of take a little bit less reeling in, like if I get a random call from somebody that's just done a Google search. And I had a great experience with a company called Hello SEO. It's a local young lady who does, she's in her 20s. I say young, I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Very young.
Right.
Doesn't know how young she is.
Right.
But she's amazing. She's an SEO nerd, loves it. And she and I did what she calls a discovery call, and we just kind of went through our SEO for about an hour, made some changes on some tags and different things that we did. Very basic stuff. Just started getting calls within a couple of days of doing that SEO. And I think little things like that are so amazing when you can make those little switches. The things like LinkedIn, when you start to focus on LinkedIn, you're posting 3 or 4 times a week. I'm finding the same thing. Is like that's been my sort of platform. I'm not posting on Facebook much. I'm not doing hardly anything on Instagram. We're posting here and there on it, but there are some clients that love it, that need Instagram, and it's very important to them. Yep. But for us, LinkedIn is the up, down, backwards, and forwards, and I think it's just the size of the audience versus who's creating content.
People are looking at LinkedIn some during the day. It's typically business folks looking for business ideas. This is what my
mindset
take is. Did you go to, there was something we had here years ago, 15, 16 years ago, called the Social Crush. Some guys came in right when social media was kind of beginning, and they said, we're going to show you how to market using social media. And they started at the chamber. They kind of did a bunch of stuff there, and they had this 2 or 3 day event. And it was the beginning of Twitter and Facebook, and maybe, I don't think Instagram was around, and all these different, and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the guy on the stage said, LinkedIn is going to be the most powerful social media network. And I put to him afterwards, I said, that is complete bullshit. I said, you have lost your mind. I said, that is the most boring, stupid platform. I've been on that thing for 10 years, and it's not worth because I was starting like 2005 or something. Of course, 2006, me too.
Right? Looking for a job.
Looking for whatever.
Yeah.
And so, and damn was he right, and damn was I wrong.
Yeah.
You mentioned too, you do a lot of video. I used to get a good amount of traction. I used to do 60-second videos with the same thoughts now that I'm writing, and I used to get really good engagement for the time, and then it started to go. And and now it's funny when I post. I do a podcast too, the No BS Sales School podcast, and we'll post clips on LinkedIn on Wednesdays.
Right.
We do written content Monday through Friday, but thing on Wednesdays. And my videos, and it might be because of my videos, they get such much less engagement than my written stuff does.
Right.
I don't know if it's algorithm, if it's my shitty videos, or whatever it is, but they don't get the same engagement or play.
It's I will tell you what I think it is.
Yeah.
Just because
you're in that space.
Whatever, you know how a chef can taste a soup and go, this needs tarragon.
Yeah.
So I think probably it looks very similar, and someone interested in consuming it can't tell that it's different than last time. And so as they're going through, they don't engage because
interesting
because of the homogeny of it. So you're trying to be consistent, but they're seeing it as homogenous, as the same as last time.
Fascinating.
So that could be why. That could also be why the 60-second videos started to decline. And I have the same thing. The easiest thing for me to do in the world is to go into my studio space, flip the lights on, and record 10 videos that all have the same shirt on and everything else. The idea is obviously until you get an engaged audience. So I don't know if you know who Alex Hermosi is.
Yeah.
But Hermosi just he changed his style completely about a month ago. And what he was doing was he was in a different location every time, different kind of like setting or whatever. And there were always the image would flip in, and there would be like, he started this whole style of captions where the captions would roll through while he was talking. And he went from that to, he is literally sitting in a chair looking at the camera, nothing moves for 37 minutes. Like he just talks to camera for 37 minutes because he realized that all of the production value, everything that he could do was not adding to what he was getting out of it because he had an engaged audience. And I'm one of those. I just this morning as I was getting ready, I was listening to an Alex Hermosi video on YouTube, knowing I don't have to look at it because nothing changes.
Right.
He's sitting in front of a black wall, right, with his tank top on and his backwards hat, and he just talks. But the information is so good, and he knows that the audience is engaged in what his information is, and he doesn't have to do the other stuff. Everybody else, if you don't have, 5 million subscribers on YouTube, what you've got to do is to vary up the content to the point that people can't predict what this is. What is this that you just put up, right? So
So you
sometimes
vary
it's
the content and the look,
yeah.
Correct?
Sometimes it's walking down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's in a studio.
That's what I used to do.
Sometimes it's all that stuff, and then you just follow that audience and where they're going, right? And so if it declines, switch it up big time and say, this is what we're going to do this time, instead of the variety of things we've done before. Let's switch it up again. That may be it. I don't know. But like, that's me tasting the soup and saying maybe we need tarragon.
Okay, good. I
Yeah,
love that.
so-
I like to change things. I got
Yeah.
this ADHD superpower.
I know.
so-
Yeah. I mean, I think every successful person does. So every time I talk to someone who's successful, they tell me they have ADHD like it's a
Really?
like it's a revelate like it's like I just wanted to tell you I have ADHD, and I go, sure. Well, that's adorable. We all have it.
Yeah,
it's
right.
fine.
Everybody's got it.
Let's
right.
try to keep it on task. You
That's
know,
funny.
I think the disorder is not having it. So I think that
I love the way you said it. That's great. It's funny though, when I do posts about that, and I talk about it on my podcast some, and I get more engagement from my posts about ADHD, anxiety, and depression
Mindset,
than
yep.
anything else.
Yep.
I mean, people call me and say, I just want to talk to you about this. And a lot of them have shame around it. I'm like,
Oh, of
whoa.
course. Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, just get your damn, as soon as you tune it right,
Yeah.
whatever it takes you to tune it, be it medicine, exercise, meditation, all the above, it takes me all those things. It makes it a superpower.
As a business owner, if you don't have stress, then you don't care about it.
Right on.
The only reason you have stress is because you care about the outcome, right?
Right.
The only way to eliminate anxiety, and anxiety is different because that's anticipating stress, right? But if you have stress, that means that you're doing something you care about. That means
Right.
that the stakes are high.
It matters.
Right. And so if you take that and use it, right, you use that to fuel what you're doing, you can't expect to ever be in a spot where you have no stress.
Right.
Because this is what we chose, right?
Right.
We didn't choose to be an employee.
It's funny. I saw this thing on Twitter the other day. That's my
Yeah.
That's my sewer. That's where I spend time.
Sure.
I don't really post there, but I
Right.
do engage with the content. And I saw this great big poster that said, I love this. We didn't do this because it was easy. We did this because we thought it would be easy.
Right.
which is so freaking true, right?
man.
We thought it'd be, for us, it's going to be different, for God's
Yeah.
sake.
Well, and I see so many business owners talk about starting a business for freedom, right? And I
God.
mean, I don't know what they think is happening, but you don't get freedom. You do get a little more control over what you do,
Yeah.
right? And the ability to say
Fail
no.
any
and-
way you want.
and you get a lot of variety. And this is what I talk about. Like, the reason I'm in business is because of the whatever 12 projects we're working on right now. There are some projects that are in the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, as so I'm managing 2 projects that are as far opposite as you can get, right? One is a 3.5-hour training video about finances. The other is a hype video around a baseball team. And, and it's like, that's why I like it. I
Yeah.
like it because of the variety, because it's
Yeah.
not the same thing every day. And I worked at a corporate job for a long time, and it would, there was some variety, but it was the same type of clients. It was the same basic work. The work itself was something you could replicate. I could write a manual and hand it to you in 3 weeks. You could be doing it yourself. And, this gives us a lot of variety. I'm interested in you being a single operator, and there is a kind of so my sewer, if you will, is probably YouTube and TikTok.
Yep.
And so a lot of what happens on YouTube, especially through my algorithm and the way it's all set up, is it's all about scaling, right? And if you can't get, and they talk about things like, if you're under $1 million a year, or, if you're only 1 to 10 million a year, or whatever it is. And I go, that pressure to scale is so strong, right? It seems like you're not in that race of scaling. Talk about that. Talk about that approach and why that's like, you could have 5 trainers out training for you and that kind of thing. Why not do that?
Well, it's funny because people ask me that all the time. Aren't you? You must be hiring some trainers out there and da da da. And my sales. You think sales has a bad rap? Talk about sales training has a really bad rap.
Oh, sure.
Right. And I think even more than sales training deserves a bad rap. I mean, to a lot of people, sales training they remember from their past or their present is oftentimes some old guy with a book telling you stories about how it used to be and what you need to do and nothing actionable. So I really have a passion for what I do, and I'm good at about three things. I'm good at training, I'm good at selling, and I'm good at coaching. And those are three things that I would say those are my superpowers, if you will. If I have one, those are my three. And everything else I pretty much suck at. And so it's just not what I get energy from. It's not what I'm great at. And so when I first started my business, I had to do everything. I was doing the damn books. I was doing the marketing. I was doing the everything. And I was struggling and drowning most of the time. And so the first thing that I said I need to get off my plate, I'm not good at details. I need to hire an assistant. And so I started with my sister, who helped me because she loved me. She wasn't very good at it, and I couldn't afford to pay much more than she would take. So, but she was very helpful. And all of a sudden I was like, I can breathe a little bit. And then I let her go, and I hired a virtual assistant who was very good. And all of a sudden, I had systems and processes in my office around my business that I was like, oh my God, this is great. So then I could spend more time selling, training, coaching. And then all of a sudden I was doing all the marketing stuff, and I was like, oh my God, this is taking a lot of bandwidth and a bunch of hours a week. And so while I am a quote solopreneur and the business owner and the founder, I also have I've got about 8 people that work around me on a part-time basis. I'm a client of theirs. And they help me stick to what I'm really good at.
Right.
And so if I can add more people, I could probably increase my revenues, but it would also probably take me away from the things that I love doing, which are selling, training, and coaching. And so I've got a nice lifestyle business. I make a really good living. I have fun doing it. I choose to do it. I choose the clients I work with. I choose the time that I work. And so that's working for me now. And at some point, I may say, you know what, I'd like to bring on somebody else. I do have somebody else who trains with me. He has a whole nother business, and he sells and trains for that too. He used to do sales training with me. So, but I keep this as, this is me, this is my business, it's an extension of me, this is who I am. And so that's kind of the route I've chosen to go. And I don't blame those people like you mentioned Grant Cardone, who has all these people. Quick funny story, I had an agent in New York. I call him agent. He was a coach, great guy. And they work with a bunch of people that did all kinds of things, solopreneurs, a lot of them in sales training, whatever. And he told me one day, he said, Grant Cardone is our biggest client.
Wow.
I said, wow. I said, suppose I told you I thought Grant Cardone was an asshole and a fraud. and he laughed and said, he may be, but he's $100 million asshole and fraud.
Yes.
I'm like, you know what? You're exactly right.
You can't argue with the results, right?
Can't argue with results.
I have read several of Grant Cardone's books. I've watched a good many of his videos. I watched the whole season of Undercover Millionaire when he was on it. Billionaire, whatever it was. Listening to him read his books, I think to myself, this guy doesn't seem to know what he's talking about. When I listen to him, he doesn't sound super smart. And that might be part of the shtick, right? And you go, he seems like a bully. He seems like kind of high energy and all of this gusto, but a lot of what he says is not wrong necessarily. I don't know how to balance all that, but I don't come away from the experience feeling educated or taken care of.
Here's what I know about
or
Grant.
Cared for.
Somebody pointed this out to me, and all of a sudden it made sense. There are many different ways of selling. Grant Cardone is great at selling from a stage.
Yes.
Standing in front of the Tony Robbins model of, man, I am the hero. I'm on the stage. And hyping people up and selling books and shit and having people invest in his real estate deals. But I would think one-on-one, not so good.
Yeah, he would have to be.
I mean, it's a bully. It's what you said. He's pressure. It's the opposite of what I teach people to do.
Well, if you watch the season of Undercover Billionaire, it's really fascinating to watch him. I don't know if you know the setup.
I don't know the setup.
So they take people who are billionaires, and of course, as we know it, billionaire can be one of these things where you go billionaire.
Yeah.
I'm not even a millionaire, so I can't even
there
really comment on it. But anyway, they take these guys who have built up a big following and fortune. They drop them in the middle of nowhere with $100 and a pickup truck.
Wow.
And they give them 90 days to make a business that's worth $1 million.
Okay.
So can you make a business that's worth $1 million? Worth $1 million, which is a valuation.
Yeah.
So they bring in an investor to say, is this business worth $1 million? And they give them 90 days to do it. And what was interesting is it's you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the first need is obviously, safety and like sustainability of personal self. So he's like, where am I going to sleep tonight? I'm not spending my $100 on a motel, so I got to figure out where to sleep, right? So he goes to a RV dealership and he says, I will help clean these RVs for you if you let me sleep in one tonight. And that's all I want is just an RV to sleep in. And so he gets this RV and he starts working for this guy at this RV place for a week or so. He makes himself a little bit of money, buys a car, and then he cleans up the car and flips the car for $500. So he takes that $500, puts it in another car, flips it for $4,000. Now he's got $4,000.
Nice.
Now he gets himself an apartment for a month.
Yep.
So he's kind of doing that. So it's interesting to watch him do this because he doesn't approach it like a billionaire. He doesn't approach it like a salesperson. He approaches it like a wanderer in the Great Depression. Like he approaches it like I have all of my stuff in a bag and I'm gonna knock this thing out.
Figure this shit out.
And so he finds a guy that has a gym, and so he says, for $30 he can join the gym, and now he's got a place to shower, that kind of thing. He befriends the guy with the gym. He gets the guy with the gym to invest in him as to get a space. And that, so it turns into
starting with the red paperclip and turning it into a house.
90 days, he gets a business worth $1 million. And I think those kind of things are interesting, and it's all his approach, at least, is all kind of brute force and just not ever giving up, right?
It's the hustle.
It's the idea that if you make 100 phone calls a day, you'll get 10 people that answer, right?
Yeah.
So it means 90 people are not going to answer, or they're going to cuss you out or slam the phone down, but 10 people will answer, and if that's all you need, right? If I can call 10, if I can get 10 a day, 5 days a week, that's 50 people I talk to who are receptive to my message, and I think that's where Grant Cardone does. I think the problem is that sales training gets a bad name because of people like that.
Yep.
Right? That do used car sales training.
Yeah.
That do real estate sales training. It isn't about caring for people. It isn't about helping them. It isn't all of that. It's what can I do?
How can I be the hero?
And I think in the Star Wars universe, that's Darth Vader, right? Or that's one of the.
It is.
That's one of the generals. It's not. It's not anybody on our side, and I think it's interesting. And of course, I learned as much from that, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so,
although it does take, to get where you've gotten, you've had to have some grit. You've had to take some risk. You've had to do some things.
Yeah. And I try to take risks, and I don't know if this resonates with you, but I try to take risks that help people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not cutting people off.
No.
I'm trying not to, but like, if I have a chance to say, if I can be very effective in a situation, even if they can't afford what I'm doing, maybe it will help them, and maybe I'll engender some goodwill here somewhere along the way, and like that's worked very well for us, and I still do it occasionally. I mean, we don't have time to do it really as much anymore, but like, we have great clients. We will help them in any way, that needs to be helped. And I have them all the time that call me, great clients. They'll call me and they'll say, I need this thing by tomorrow and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But could you do it?
Right.
And I just had an email 5 minutes before you walked in the door. Like, they have a presentation going on tomorrow night. They're like, hey, this video you made for us back in February is great, except that it's got these 4 things in it that we can't use. And I was hoping that you could go through and re-edit this for tomorrow night. And I go, I don't know. I'll see.
Right.
Like
do my best.
I'll figure it out. And most of the time we can. Most of the time we can help people. But I think Grant Cardone's perspective is that if I bully you into buying this, it's going to help you, right?
Right.
You don't want to.
It helps me, but his intent is me.
It's also going to help you, but it's mainly going to help me, right?
Yes.
And so I think it's definitely an interesting approach, and I love to have a little bit more humanity in the sales than just numbers and just pushing,
Totally agree. People talk about, sales is just a numbers game. It's just a numbers game.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't give any credit to having any skill. It doesn't give any credit to having human skills. And the reality is, do you have to do the work? Yes. Do you have to make the calls? Yes. Is there a way that you can influence the outcome, not just by numbers? Absolutely. It's mindset, it's skill, it's strategy, it's all those things that can be changed. By saying it's just a numbers game, you're just basically taking anything human out of the operation. Right.
And I think it's all human, right? And I think audience marketing is the same way. Audience is the most important thing, right? If I need to sell you tires right now and you don't need tires,
right.
I have no way of selling you tires, no matter how good of a salesman I am, right? No tire is going to change the fact that you don't need tires.
Right.
Right. When you need tires, however, then it gets commoditized. Now I've got a Midas across the street from a Firestone, right? I'm choosing the Firestone if I'm going down this road because I turn right into the Firestone and turn right out of the Firestone.
Yep.
If I got to turn left to get into the Midas, I'm not going to Midas, right? And that's how badly commoditized that is, right? Is that I don't need them until I need them, and when I need them, I don't really care who does it.
Do you know that there's this thing that I talk about, and I'll see if you agree with this, that there's the 5% of people in your marketplace are actively looking for what you are selling.
Right.
They're out there right now. They may be calling you.
And they have no idea you exist.
Yeah, they have no idea. Or they did talk about the tires.
Yeah.
I'm sending an RFP. I want 3 bids because there's some rule we got to get 3, right? And so blah, blah, blah. And those people are out there. And then there's a 20% below that are probably not actively looking.
Right.
But if they trusted you and figured out a compelling reason, they would change.
They give you a shot.
Right? And they might change. And I would, our contention is that I would rather work with the 20% than the 5%.
Right.
Because the 5% have already done their research. They're in the marketplace. They're looking, they're trying to apples to apples, which all that means is they're trying to spreadsheet it and buy something cheap.
Right.
And my contention as well is people don't know how to buy whatever it is we sell. They've been trained by crappy salespeople.
Sure.
To get 3 prices and pick the one in the middle because that's the safe one, blah, 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 blah. It's just crap.
Well, and frankly, with tires, just back to using a similar analogy, you don't want cheap tires.
Nope.
Right? But you want at least the Michelin, Firestone, Bridgestone level of tire, right? If you get all of those on a lineup, you can't tell me there's much difference between any of those. If I'm racing, if I have a race car, then I definitely need very specific tires for my race car. But I definitely don't want the cheap tires. I don't want the no-name tires.
But there's some people that have to buy cheap.
That's true.
And they're they will be your worst customer if you end up with them.
Right. And there's no real way of getting anything out of that other than just that relationship. And that's part of the job of sales, is to figure that out in that sales process, to say, this is probably not for you, right? And we don't win many RFPs because we don't submit to many RFPs. Almost always RFPs are chosen
Somebody's got the inside track.
Somebody's
if you're not
chosen
sure
already.
it's you, it's not.
And I will tell you, for anybody who doesn't know what an RFP is, it's a request for proposal. And what happens is so many, especially government organizations, but like a lot of folks, if you get to a certain price threshold, they've got to bid it out and make sure. And we lost an RFP in the spring, and I won't say who it was, over $1,000. And it was a $20,000 RFP. And because we had multiple pricing levels, we said, look, we could do it for 18.5, or if you wanted this other thing, we could do it for 21. They said, oh, well, it's over the limit, so we got to bid it out. Somebody bid 19 for it and got it, right?
Shit.
And you just going, why didn't you just call me? You know, you could have just called me and said, hey, you're a grand over on this other one. Could you just redo this?
Can you hook a brother up? Yeah, could you redo this? Right.
Because we would have done 18.5. I would have taken 18. Hell, I would have taken 17 versus not getting it, right? But anyway, you know, the RFP process is a tough one. And I think once you get into that, you're again taking a lot of the humanity out of it. You're taking the can I help you stuff out of it. Like finding the best person to help you is the goal.
Key of those things, and we've talked a little bit about this, is quite frankly, if you're receiving the RFP and this is the first you've heard about the issue, somebody else already has control.
Right.
I think that the key in sales with an RFP is deciding, is this worth, as like anything else, is worth my time? Can I reach out and ask the questions I need to have asked? Or do they say, don't ask any questions,
no
or
questions.
You can't reach out? Or
this
50
50-page document is enough to give you all the information.
You should have everything, and you're not allowed to. Then if you hadn't had that conversation beforehand, you can make a business decision to move forward for whatever reason, but your chances are at best one out of however many, and plus somebody's got two chances because they wrote the damn thing or have the inside track.
Right, and that's usually who gets it is who they wrote it for.
Yeah.
So Walker, you have written a book. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
This is really cool because you're the first podcast guest we have that's written a book.
How about that?
I think Shanice Cleckley wrote a book, but we didn't talk about her book for some reason in the she didn't bring it up. So talk about your book a little bit and what's that about, and why in the world would anybody write a book?
Right. Oh my God. So my book is called Some Will, Some Won't, So What, Who's Next? It's a book that I wrote about my sales process. And I started thinking about it about 3 years ago. I created a course that my clients use as material. And I was like, I need to flesh in more of this so people can understand. And so I started writing the book, and I'm not great at organizing things. And so I ended up hiring an editor, and he took everything that I wrote and basically we tore it up. And he said, let's figure out how we organize this thing. And so once we had this idea of what the organization of the book needed to be, then I could begin to fill in all the stuff. And it was a long, arduous process. I enjoyed it. It was kind of fun. And I was just taking a lot of the material that I use and the stories that I have and just kind of putting them down on paper. And so we got through that, and I thought, oh, this is great. I have now finished writing my book, and my editor had gone through it a couple of times. Oh, this is great. I'm finished. This was in the last spring, early spring. That's when the work began.
Oh, boy.
That's when we hired a company to help lay the book out and design the book. Didn't know we had to do that, but it makes perfect sense now. And, what font do you want, and what size do you want? What will the cover look like, and what will the title be, and what will each... do you want little dots for points, or do you want square? All these things that I'd never thought of before, and how will we do the design and all that stuff. And so that's been interesting. And then the next question was, how do you launch this thing? Mm-hmm. And what does launch a book mean? And do you want to self-publish, which we've decided to do? No publishers raising their hands to I think what a publisher does is they will pay you ahead of time. Mm-hmm. You'll get a forward, or they'll give you money ahead of time, and then they will work with you to get all the book designed, and then they will market the book, and then you get about 7 cents of every dollar sold, but they're taking on the expense and the risk. And nobody's doing that for Walker McKay's sales book. It's hard to get that for any business book, I understand, unless you're Grant Cardone, for example.
Right.
So anyway, we're now launching the book, and I'm learning that, you may have known this, Amazon, when you order a book from Amazon, they don't keep any books in stock. I had no idea.
There is no real stock for that kind of stuff.
So you order it, and that sucker prints right there. They glue it, put it together, and send it out.
Wow.
Crazy. I had no
didn't
idea.
know that.
And so, and I thought that at least they kept a stack of covers. That gets printed at the same time. It goes out. And so we will be selling the book through Amazon. The launch will be, I think, the first week in October. So we're planning on it's about a month from now.
Nice.
As of this recording. And then we'll also sell it from my website at walkermckay.com. The purpose of the book is to talk about the sales process. I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but we've learned that buyers have a process that they follow to keep control during a sales conversation.
Okay.
And they have 4 steps. And the first step is some version of how much does it cost? So when somebody calls you and says, hey, look, I'm interested in working with you for marketing, about how much do you charge, right? And if you make it past this first step, and then you have a meeting, right? You get together and they will be typically very nice, ask you a bunch of questions. You ask them a bunch of questions, then you're given a bunch of information. You want to show them how smart you are and let you know, right? Of course, we do want to do that. And so the first step is they ask about price. If you get through that, second step is we share our information. They say, how about put that in writing? Give me a price on that, blah, blah. And so we give them our thing. That's called free consulting. Ask about price, get free consulting. Step number 3, we send it over. We go over the stuff. We're ready to overcome objections. And, a lot of times we don't get objections. Nobody wants to wrestle with a salesperson. They don't want to argue with a salesperson. They don't want to get into that. They know you're a killer trained to overcome objections. And so step number 3 is they say, let me think about this. I need to talk to my partner. Let me sleep on this. Give me a week. I'm getting ready to go on vacation. My partner's traveling in Europe, whatever that is. But it really looks good. Like what you've done here. Apples to apples. Can't see any reason why I wouldn't do business with you, or at least give you a good shot. Salesperson goes, hell yeah, they love me. I've got a relationship. This is great. And so we call back because they say, call me next Friday. So we call back. By the way, your person's had your information. They probably know somebody else who does what you do. They've either Googled it, looked it up, or they call their buddy who's doing it now and say, hey, these guys at As Told By came by. They said they could do what you're doing, but for less money. Can you help me out? And guess what? The current guy goes, oh, yeah, absolutely we can. Sure we can. Or you show them something brand new. Oh, we can do that, when in fact they can't. And so anyway, or they figure out how to do it in-house. And so the next step is we're supposed to follow up on Fridays, just so we do what we're going to do. And we call, and they see it's us. They realize they're not going to do business with us. They don't want to tell us that, don't want to hurt the guy's feelings. So they send you to voicemail. So we heart dies a little bit. Hey, just like we talked about before, just checking in. Wanted just calling to let you know. Just following up. Want to see if there's something we can do. Ready to get going. Want to get you going. Excited about our business. Leave a voice message. Well, they don't listen. Monday comes by, the boss goes, hey, how's that hot lead of yours? Well, they love me. I must have missed him on Friday. Must have gone out of town. So we call him back on Tuesday. Guy goes, oh, shoot, it's him again. Really like him, good guy, but I'm not going to talk to him, send you to voicemail. Your heart dies a little bit as a sales guy. And you leave this message, hey, just call and see if you had any questions. We're ready to get going, need to get going here. And then nothing. So you call back Wednesday or Thursday, you're kind of mad, and you call a third time. And he sees this you and goes, why the hell doesn't this guy get a clue? I'm not going to do business. What the hell is wrong with him? Why is he bothering me? And it's funny, we're doing exactly what they tell us to do.
Right.
And so what happens is we get caught in this thing over and over and over again, and people get cynical. We say things like prospecting doesn't work, or cold calls don't work, or nobody's buying, or our price is too high, when the reality is we're just following the buyer's process. And the buyer's process will never lead to good results for us.
Right.
So I teach a process that gives us even ground with our prospects, and that we can tell the truth, be direct, and that we're just as responsible for telling the prospect we're not going to be the right fit as they might be for us. We have just as much right to do that. Yeah. And with the mindset that some people will buy, some people won't. So what? Who's the next person I need to be talking to? Right.
Yeah, that's amazing. And as you were describing that process, I'm going through the emotional roller coaster that you have in that. I go through that process a lot, right? Yeah. And it does at that point become a numbers game. It does say, look, if this can happen, if I talk to 100 of these people to get 10,
eventually,
right, then that'll be fine, but boy, it's
hard.
It's tough. Yeah.
We got to flip the game.
Yeah.
And if we keep doing it the prospect's way, we're not going to, it doesn't work for us. And the prospect doesn't get the help they need. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They don't know how to buy.
Yeah.
And so if we let them do it their way, they're not going to get what they wanted.
Right.
And it's our responsibility to at least say, look, here, let's negotiate the rules of the game up front. Let's talk about what we both will do and how we both should act.
So so can you weigh in on the idea of saying check-in or following up or whatever?
So,
can you weigh in on that?
Yeah. So I hate those. We're just checking in, following up, circling back, reaching around, whatever those things. I make fun of those things. And what I tell people is, look, depending upon your sales cycle, depending on what you do, we need to stay. If somebody's an ideal client for you, unless something ideal prospect for you, prospect somebody has not bought, client somebody that has bought, we need to stay in touch with them because things change, right? Everybody's world changes every 90 days, certainly.
Yep.
And so, but what I tell people is, instead of saying, I would say it screams, I don't have enough to do if I'm circling back, reaching around, whatever the hell. And so I tell people, when you call, when you follow up, you can say, hey, look, it's my job to keep up with people like you. Last time we talked, you said everything was fine. My guess is nothing has changed. Is there any reason we should be talking now?
Nice.
And so my goal with my clients is for them to be direct, transparent, no bullshit, right? Straight up. And because it is my job to keep up with people like you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. That's good. That's much better. I find myself doing it, even though every TikTok on sales tells me not to do it.
Oh, really?
Right?
What do they tell you to do?
They say don't. So they do things like that. They talk about it being a low power phrase, right? I don't have the power. You have the power, right?
Yeah.
So they're all there's 8 different tactics. I mean, if you get on TikTok for sales talk, as
I'm so afraid I'll get sucked into the void. I'm just afraid of it.
You will. It's custom designed to draw you in.
Of course.
Yes.
Right. I get it.
That's its whole function, right?
Yeah.
Is drawing you in. But a lot of it is just changing that dynamic. Primarily it's, I had something to tell you. It's, I wanted to get your opinion on something.
Sure.
People love to be asked for their opinion, right? I got one for LinkedIn cold calls the other day. Guy who's a LinkedIn sales expert. He said that you should have an anchor. So if you're cold calling, you should have an anchor. Hey, Walker, I know you from the thing, whatever it is. I used to listen to you on the radio, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's all I needed, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I heard your pitch for Sandler.
Yeah.
I think I'm ready. And you go, no, you're not. So anchor, compliment. Okay. I love what you're doing. I heard you're on the radio. I love what you say. And then question.
Okay.
So
if I ask you a question.
Anchor, compliment, question. So if you do it that way, where you're saying, here's what we have in common, right? And the good thing about working locally in Columbia, South Carolina, is we all have something in common, whatever that happens to be. You used to go to the church that my friend used to go to, whatever it happens to be, we all have something. But that compliment, and then, hey, I wanted to ask you a question. Do you have time for a phone call? I want to ask your opinion about something. I saw what you were doing, and I wanted to ask you what you were doing with it. All that stuff. That's the way to. I
think the important thing is that I think even if you're circling back, reaching around, whatever, the important part is we're picking up the phone and doing something. I think that is better than nothing.
Right.
And if we have better strategies that we're comfortable with the anchor, compliment, question, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think a pattern interrupt is great, which is saying something that they don't expect at all, which is fine too. Just something that's going to go, huh? To take 5 minutes.
What I started doing this year, because I have a studio, is I started making videos. So my response to you is a video, right?
Nice.
And so I can embed that video in an email and say, hey, Walker, we haven't talked in a couple of weeks. Hope everything's well. I wanted to ask you something if you have a minute, or had an idea for you, or I wanted to offer you this thing, or whatever. I had an idea for you is a great, especially if you really do have an idea.
Yeah.
You don't want to pitch that if you don't actually have an idea. But I'm always thinking about angles for things and, ideas for clients and way that they can do things.
Can I offer you one more?
Sure.
I owe you an apology.
Oh, okay.
Hey, John, Walker McKay, I owe you an apology. Will you call me back? I'd like to tell you.
Okay.
And the apology could be anything from...
I'd like to do it in person.
Well, maybe so, maybe not. The apology could be, you know what, you've been on I've had your business card on my desk for 2 years. I've never picked up the phone and called. My bad.
Right. Meant to have lunch with you after we talked about it, and we never did.
I dropped the ball.
That's amazing. That's a really good one.
Nothing is 100%, and I think... I think I'll apologize to anybody in the world because I'm sure I've done something to piss them off or let them down in some way. And I got no problem with apologies. Some people say, "Oh, that's a weak move." I'm like, you know what? Being vulnerable, I think, is one of the ways that we can connect with people the strongest.
My particular flavor of ADHD is I don't remember everything that I'm doing.
100%. Oh yeah, me too.
So I'm sure I said something inappropriate somewhere along the way. Okay, Walker, thank you so much. Here's how we end every podcast. I have 5 questions.
Okay.
Quick response. What is your favorite fictional character?
My favorite fictional character.
Books, movies, TV shows. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Hold on, coming back. It's recency bias, but I loved the character on. See, here's my ADHD thing. I can't remember names. I loved the fictional character Carrie. As the CIA person in movie, it was a series. Move to the next question. I'll think.
Carrie.
About this one. She was a badass CIA woman who. It was. Anyway, go to the next question.
Next one. Back. Okay, next one. Favorite song.
Favorite song. I have a. My favorite song is probably by the Soup Dragons.
Oh.
And his future's so bright, you gotta wear shades.
Nice.
I used to hear that in group therapy at the end of the night about 40 years ago.
Very good.
I sing that out loud every time I hear it.
I like it. That's a first time we've heard Soup Dragons on that piece.
One hit wonders, the Soup Dragons.
Favorite season of the year?
Fall, 100%. Everything I love to do happens in October, November.
And it's 75 degrees outside right now.
Right on. I like when I can wear a fleece outside, be in the woods, watch football, build a fire. That's my favorite time of year.
Yep. I am 100% with you. Favorite dessert?
I like key lime pie. My favorite.
You been to Key West?
I'm going to do a talk there in about a month, so I'm going to have some there.
So what I found in Key West is that there's key lime everything. They are so excited about key lime pie they can't stand it.
Good.
And so there are 1,000 little key lime pie places all over the place. And what you need to do is research who was the original key lime pie place, because I'm sure they're still around.
Absolutely.
And there was a show I used to watch called The Prophet by this guy named Marcus Lemonis would come in and rehab businesses. Yeah. And he did the oldest key lime pie place in Key West. And so you should look it up. But it's one of my favorites too. I'm completely with you. Favorite sitcom?
The Office.
Yeah.
100%. Hands down. Love it. It's a classic. There's nothing else is as good as that.
I would say Seinfeld is probably better, but only by a margin of like 6%. I don't think it's a lot better, but it was also a time in the
different time in the world,
time in your life, and all of that stuff. So
we had my children locked on to that when they were very young, and we had The Office on basically all the time. It's some of the greatest lines, greatest shows, greatest writing.
Well, and I think what I love is a sitcom that focuses on, because The Office, in my opinion, is the redemption of Michael Scott.
Yes,
right?
Correct.
They present Michael as a buffoon, as a guy who can't do anything, and somehow he's Forrest Gump through this entire thing and becomes the greatest of them. And so I think it's great to have a multi-season arc on a sitcom. That's not normal.
Right.
So that's one thing Seinfeld doesn't do. Right. Is multi-season arcs. So I'm kind of with you on that.
Good.
So have you thought about fictional character?
Damn it. It's right. Homeland.
It's okay.
Homeland.
Oh,
God,
yeah.
I loved Homeland. Homeland was amazing.
So Carrie, okay, I see.
She was the blonde.
Yes.
Batshit crazy.
Okay.
But she was awesome.
So, that is Claire Danes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I got to know Claire Danes on My So-Called Life.
Stop it.
Which came on TV, like MTV, I think, in the early 90s.
Yep.
And I got to know her because we were about the same age-ish, right? And I had a hard time with her in Homeland because I saw her as the kid in My So-Called Life. But Homeland's amazing.
I loved it. And my wife and I, we typically don't like the same kind of shows. But that one we both grabbed onto. I'm an old man.
Yeah.
I like to go to bed at 9:30 at night. We would be up at 11 o'clock, and I go, just one more episode.
One more episode,
oh,
yeah.
my God. I was so mad when it was over.
So many seasons that you can get through it.
Right.
My wife, strangely, my wife and I right now, we have found 4 or 5 series over the years that we could watch together. Lost, we watched together. Grey's Anatomy was our pandemic binge.
Right.
So we watched 15 seasons of Grey's Anatomy through the pandemic. It was bad. True Blood.
Don't know about True Blood.
True Blood is terrible in a lot of ways. But we watched the whole thing and couldn't turn away. It was like the dialogue was odd and everything was just so funky about it. But right now we have a 14-year-old daughter, and we said we should watch this Anne of Green Gables series that's on Netflix. My daughter says that it's too much. It's too sad. She doesn't like watching this quirky girl get picked on. But my wife and I have kept watching it. Wow. So we watched the first episode with my daughter. She's like, I don't want to watch this anymore.
I'm out, right.
Yeah. And so my wife is like, we should watch Anne tonight. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I don't know why we're into it, but it reminds us of Little House on the Prairie that both of us watched when we were kids. Yep. And it's all very sad. Everything happens as just tragedy over and over again. And we are hooked. And so,
Sally and I went up to Cape Breton Island and Prince Edward Island in Canada about 10 years ago.
Never been there. Yeah,
it's beautiful. That was where Anne of Green Gables was set.
Yep.
And so we went. Sally was a big fan. I was like, And of the books. I
Right.
never read the books, but we went to the house. It rained like 8 inches the day we were there. So anyway, that's my memory of Anne of Green Gables.
Well, I didn't know much about it when we started watching the first episode, but then the character of Anne, she kept saying sorry. She said sorry like that. And I said, wait a minute, they're in Canada. They're not in Montana,
right,
or whatever.
Yeah.
They're in Canada,
Montana.
Yeah, she's like, what's that about? And I'm like, oh God, they're in Canada. So, well, Walker, it has been so good talking to you. I could talk to you another 2 hours. It was really great. Thank you so much for doing this, and I can't wait to read your book. I hope to get a copy soon.
I'll shoot you a copy.
All right,
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And y'all remember, subscribe to the podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on As Told by You.